Welcome to the 5th Annual Food Justice Film Festival presented by the Center for Biological Diversity. I'm Linda Rico, Food Justice Film Festival organizer with the Center. One of the films we are featuring this year is Invisible Valley, directed by Aaron Maurer and Zach McMillan. Invisible Valley weaves together the disparate stories of undocumented farm workers, wealthy snowbirds, and music festival goers over the course of a year in California's Coachella Valley. Through intimate glimpses of life on both ends of the valley, the film uncovers looming environmental and social crises for everyone who call it home, with dire implications for the rest of the country. I'm so happy to be joined today by one of the directors of the film, Aaron. Thank you for speaking with me today, Aaron.
Thank you, Linda. Great to be here.
So I want to start with what made you want to create a documentary about migrant and immigrant farm workers working in the Coachella Valley specifically?
Yeah, the Coachella Valley was really interesting. It stood out to us for a number of reasons, but it's one of these places that's very unique because it's known, globally for, these music festivals and people travel from all over the world and migrate from all over the world. Uh, it's also known for Palm Springs, swimming pools and pink Cadillacs and, sort of Hollywood getaway. And what most people don't know, most people, even people from, LA who come here, who go to the valley often don't necessarily realize that half of the valley is an agricultural center. And the fact that there are, this title Invisible Valley like doesn't necessarily refer to the migrant farm workers being an invisible community, but more that communities are invisible to one another.
Mhm.
And so a lot of our intention was to try to sort of reveal these invisible lines that connect us all. And certainly, the agricultural system is a major one of those that connect all of us across the entire country. And it's so vital. And so many people don't really have an idea of the specifics of it, especially those, showing the film, a lot of people, especially those who live in, urban centers and cities, and specifically people who just don't live near agricultural areas, they were shocked at sometimes to see, footage of migrant workers running up rows with, giant sacks of peppers, and that they think that so much of the farming is automated that there's, very little human element anymore, and the fact that a lot of the population just doesn't even know that that's happening still, and that these people have rights and needs, and a lot of times they're not being met. That was really obviously important to sort of try to put a spotlight on.
Right. And the Coachella Valley is only about 2 hours from downtown Los Angeles. But in that valley, there's a major lack of infrastructure, access to healthy food, housing, and safety in the community, even though this is where our food is being harvested primarily by migrant and immigrant farm workers. So while you were there filming, can you describe what you saw, more specifically, the conditions of the community that the farm workers are living in there?
Yeah, it is really, there's a sort of a dividing line in the valley where it really, and we show it in a couple parts of the film that, there are sections where there's literally a walled golf course with multi-million-dollar homes,
Mhm.
and then, laborers picking crops across the street.
Right.
And the infrastructure really tanks, it really falls apart very quickly. And the further you go, the worse it gets in a lot of cases. Um, so, there were different sort of pockets, and different kind of micro communities dealing with different levels of challenge. There are lots of trailer camps. There are lots of, there are some people that have, invested in creating kind of good trailer parks,
Mhm.
some of which we feature in the film. But then there are also, a lot of people that are living sort of off the grid to a degree where there isn't any checks and balances. There's no government regulation.
Mhm.
There's sometimes no running water. problems with electricity.
Mhm.
You know, there have been times in the valley where there have been some sort of high profile instances where, you know, government officials will kind of come down and the media will come down and they'll kind of make a showing of kind of closing down some of these areas that are very unsafe and unhealthy. Um, but, you know, that's just a band-aid and it doesn't really solve the systemic issues. So another one just going to pop up a
Mhm.
year later. You know, there are two groups really. There are the groups that sort of have their home base in the valley and kind of live there and migrate with the season. And then there are folks that really are migratory, you know, and they're coming from Mexico or wherever.
Mhm.
And, you know, as we showcase for part of the film, you know, folks like that who are really just coming into town, you know, they're sleeping in their cars, they're sleeping in the irrigation ditches next to the fields, they're sleeping in the parking lot, on the floor, on the concrete,
Mhm.
you know, in the town of Mecca, there's, you know, a little community gas station and, you know, they just sort of all sleep there. And so, you know, one of the groups we were following in the movie is the Galilee Center in
Mhm.
Mecca, who are doing amazing work, you know, trying to support and, you know, successfully supporting those communities there, starting a shelter, giving people, you know, just a place to get out of the heat, you know, in the harvest season, even at night, it can be in the 90s
Mhm.
and you're working all day in 100-degree weather and then sleeping on the concrete.
Right.
These are not sustainable, equitable things, you know, to be putting
Right.
people through who are picking our crops. So, uh, you know, it varies from um, pretty dangerous to, you know, sort of severely under under needed.
Mhm. And we see throughout the film the seasons of these farm workers' lives and how they change.
Hmm.
You touched on that right now, saying that some, have different types of migrating that they do. Some go from working the fields to working in wealthy homeowners' homes as maids or gardeners, and then working in other businesses as janitors and maids again. And then we see them at the Coachella Music Festival picking up trash of festival goers and then back into the fields. But
Right.
all of this with barely enough pay to get by or afford a place to live or even buy healthy food to eat. We know that our food system is unjust and was built on racist policies, but even now, the majority of farm workers still aren't paid livable wages. Why do you think the US has been able to get away with this for so long? And have you seen any changes of this in the Coachella Valley since filming?
I mean, I think the main reason people get away with it is because it is sort of off the grid in a sense that, you know, you know, you got to drive a ways out to get to these places and they are isolated communities. So, you know, I think that there was, you know, obviously, you know, Cesar Chavez and the whole movement to, you know, get rights for workers was a really important one, but I think it only got so far. And then, you know, time and oversight allows for the continuation of, you know, these sort of predatory practices. And, uh, you know, unfortunately, our country was built on that. You know, our country was built on exploiting labor to produce agricultural and, you know, so I think having it be off the grid is really the main reason. You know, OSHA you know, can only do so much. Um, I think people sort of find ways to skirt the system. They know when a check is coming for the most part. They know when an inspection is coming.
Mhm.
So, you know, and then because there's so many undocumented workers, cheap labor, people who are afraid to speak up, people who are afraid to, you know, say anything about, you know, their exploitation. Um, it's just sort of a cycle that is unfortunately easy to perpetuate. And I do see a change happening slowly. I think there are, you know, so many people working in social justice and food justice that are pushing, educating, and letting people know that like you can, even if you are an undocumented worker, you do still have rights and you do still have a leg to stand on if you're being mistreated. And there are more and more programs being set up and sort of information getting out there
Mhm.
for folks to understand that and to be able to do something about it.
Mhm. While you were out there filming, did you have any experiences with like the pesticides or any of the like air pollution, anything like that that the farmers experience on a daily basis?
Certainly, there's a section of the film that talks about the Salton Sea area, which is, a large, there's a large agricultural area all around the Salton
Mhm.
Sea. And, there was a lot of dust storms that kick up. There's a lot, that seabed is being continuously exposed,
Mhm.
through environmental issues. And it's just filled with toxins. And, um, we were caught in some of those dust storms. And it's not pleasant, not pleasant at all. It kind of felt like it shaved a couple of years off my life. Um, just, trying to not inhale clouds of,
Mhm.
toxic, literal toxic clouds of plumes of smoke.
Mhm.
So, that was just a taste. And I feel like that's, and that was a sort of big example, it was a very sort of visually impactful example. And yet, this stuff is affecting people on a daily basis. You don't need to have a big plume of smoke to be ingesting tons of chemicals.
Yeah.
We met with, and some people that didn't make it into the film, but who, young women who had cancer in their 20s because they'd been working the fields, since they were 16 years old, and just like really severe, they were able to sort of pull through, but like just conditions that we shouldn't be putting on anybody.
Right. What do you think was the biggest thing that you learned about undocumented farm workers while you were making this film?
Um, there was such a, because we were sort of bouncing between both, parts of the valley, and there was, one of the most illuminating things early on, and just that continued throughout the entire process, was how resistant wealthy folks were for allowing us access to speaking to us to show, for anything. It took a long time to get people to let us speak with them.
Mhm.
And, that is triply true for the farm owners,
Mhm.
most of which were incredibly resistant, to say the least.
Yeah.
But the migrant communities who are the most vulnerable
Mhm.
were so open. Once that initial trust was formed and they knew, what our intentions were, they were so open, so proud of
Mhm.
their work,
Yeah.
so welcoming in any, like so ready to give a little of whatever they had to us.
Mhm.
And it was such a sort of just simply like profound and beautiful thing to see, like how um just how proud they were of like of what they do, because they know how important it is,
Right.
even if it's sort of overshadowed.
Mhm. And how can we support the farm workers of Coachella Valley? Is there like an action that we can take, or do you know of any ways to offer support specifically for them?
Yeah, I mean, specifically for the Coachella Valley, like I said, the Gallery Center is, right in the heart of it in Mecca, California, and they are, boots on the ground there every single day, 365,
Mhm.
um, clothing drives, food drives, the shelter for when, the migrant season comes.
Right.
They constantly have volunteer programs. They are constantly accepting donations. And it's really a one-to-one thing. Like everything they get goes right to this community.
Yeah.
And so, they're doing excellent work. There are other, communities out there, but that was just the one that we worked with the closest and,
Mhm.
feel really passionate about.
Yeah. And I wanted to know if there was anything else that you wanted to share about your experience making the film.
The real overarching thing we were wanting to do was to, show the interconnection, as I was saying before, these invisible lines,
Mhm.
the fact that we're all, the fact that all these communities in the valley are migratory communities, the sort of word migrant has been politically charged in this sort of negative way. And yet these snowbirds who spend, 5 months out of the year traveling from Arizona, Minnesota, wherever to, enjoy the nice weather. They're migrating every year.
Yeah.
The festival communities are migrating every year from all over the world. We're always in different states of flux and transition. And, the birds are migrating every year through the Salton Sea, and that's a very important migrational route for them. And,
Mhm.
it was just sort of it was sort of a lens in which to look at things and show that we're all connected. We're all just the same at the end of the day. And like it might just be that you were born in a different family in a different part of the country, with a different color skin. And that's just how you ended up, and it's really um uh I don't want to say the luck of the draw because I think the other thing we showed is that it doesn't really having a lot of money doesn't necessarily make you happier or make your life more fulfilled.
Mhm.
So ultimately, yeah, we're all in it together, and that was sort of the overarching thing that we always try to hammer home.
Well, I loved it and I really enjoyed the film. It was a great film, and I'm just so happy that it could be part of the festival this year. And I wanted to just say thank you so much for speaking with me today. I really appreciate your time. And as a reminder to everybody watching, don't forget to sign up for this year's Food Justice Film Festival at foodjusticefilmfestival.com. As always, the festival is free to sign up and free to watch all four feature films anytime from October 24th through the 27th. You can also catch all of our 2024 virtual interviews on our website all year long. Thank you, Aaron, for joining me today, and thank you everyone for watching, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.